Science and Buddhism. The connection? When science nods to Buddhist teachings. Part 1. Science and Buddhism. Two paths that seem opposed but are coming together. There is something remarkable happening in the modern world. Science, with its laws, particle accelerators, cosmological models, relativity and quantum physics, seems to be gradually drawing closer to Buddhism. On one side is the fruit of reason and experiment. On the other side is the result of awakening and introspection. One path ventures outward to observe the material world. The other turns inward to gaze directly at consciousness. Yet these two paths, which once seemed to diverge, are converging at their deepest question: what is reality? We have long thought that science and religion must stand in opposition, one relying on reason, the other on faith, one built on theory, laws and models, the other on belief, doctrine and scripture. But there is one exception, a religion that, strangely, demands no blind faith. That religion is Buddhism. The Buddha does not ask you to kneel and pray. He does not insist that you believe in him simply because he is enlightened. He says only, see for yourself, reflect for yourself, observe for yourself. There is no coercion, no imposition, no absolute truth to accept without question. And perhaps it will not surprise you to learn that many of the world's greatest scientists hold Buddhism in special regard. Einstein, the father of relativity who revolutionized modern physics, famously said, "If there is any religion that could cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism." Why did he say this? Perhaps because he saw in Buddhist teaching no rigid dogma, no creator deity demanding belief, no rejection of reason, no hostility to inquiry. Instead, there is a path of calm awareness, patience, depth, and self-verification. If you harbor a bit of doubt, that is a good thing, for Buddhism does not oppose doubt. On the contrary, proper doubt is the beginning of wisdom. You need not believe me. You need not believe what is written in the scriptures. You need not even believe Einstein. You only need to listen, observe, and experience directly. What is science? It is the process of studying the world through evidence, reason, testing, and observation. And what is the Dharma? It is the process of observing oneself, body, mind, sensations, thoughts, suffering, impermanence, arising and passing away, all held in the light of mindful awareness. These two paths, one through the microscope, the other through meditation, meet at the same point. Truth does not lie in words, in concepts, or in books. It only reveals itself when we face it directly. Today, quantum physicists speak of emptiness. Neuroscientists study the effects of meditation. Psychologists use mindfulness to treat depression. Cosmological models begin to resemble the Buddhist principles of impermanence, non-self, and dependent origination. The world is shifting, and what the Buddha taught more than 2,000 years ago is no longer mere doctrine, but a frontier for future science. So why should you watch this entire series? Buddhism is not just a religion for seeking peace. And if you ever believe that science is the only way to understand the universe, you will expand your perspective. When you find yourself lost in questions without answers, you will be handed a mirror to see yourself clearly. We will not argue about right or wrong. We will not pit science against Buddhism. Instead, we will explore how, beneath all apparent differences, there may lie something very similar. A stillness, a field of energy, a truth that cannot be spoken but can be felt by an awakened mind. In the next 10 parts, we will traverse each aspect, from dependent origination, non-self, and meditation to quantum physics, multiverses, the brain and consciousness, from karma and cause and effect to chaos theory and nonlinear systems, from the question, who am I, to the limits that science cannot cross. Not to debate, not to foster blind faith, but to understand more deeply ourselves and the world around us. Part 2. Buddhism requires no faith, critical thinking, and direct verification. Buddhism does not demand faith, and this very fact may be the bridge that opens the entire path. When you approach Buddhism correctly, no one there requires you to believe. No scripture ever states that you must be absolutely loyal to what is written. No one, not even the Buddha himself, says you will attain liberation simply by believing. On the contrary, the deeper you read, the more you see that Buddhism is a path you walk yourself. No one else carries you. No one else thinks for you. No one else awakens in your place. The Buddha once spoke a very famous line: "Do not hastily believe something just because you have heard it many times. Do not believe because it is recorded in scriptures. Do not believe merely because the speaker is a revered teacher. Examine it for yourself, see clearly for yourself, and then believe." That statement, preserved for over 2,000 years, still stands undiminished as an invitation away from superstition. Pause for a moment and imagine. Out of all the religions you have known, how many encourage you to doubt? Most faith systems demand obedience, believing before understanding, or prohibit questioning. Buddhism, however, welcomes your skepticism and even encourages you to challenge, provided you question with a clear mind. Skepticism, when properly placed, does not destroy faith but matures it. Faith becomes grounded not in blind acceptance but in direct experience. This closely mirrors the spirit of science. Science is not built on worship but on doubt, on questions, on discarding old assumptions, on re-examining what seems self-evident. Galileo was condemned for saying that the Earth orbits the Sun. Einstein was criticized because relativity contradicted classical physics. Darwin was opposed because his theory of evolution denied that humans were formed from clay. But without the courage to doubt, science cannot advance. And without the freedom to observe, the Dharma cannot truly be called the path of awakening. Thus we see that Buddhism, though called a religion, is essentially an open intellectual system, a method, a tool, a map, not a fixed destination or rigid truth to be accepted, but an invitation to turn inward, to enter and see for yourself. Many confuse borrowed knowledge with direct wisdom. You can read hundreds of books on meditation, memorize treatises and scripture citations, yet still not truly understand meditation if you have never sat in silence. It is like knowing every recipe but never tasting the dish. Understanding is different from realization. Buddhism does not encourage the accumulation of information. It guides you toward first-hand verification. Likewise in science, a researcher is not recognized for reading many books, but for generating new understanding through experimentation, trial and error, correction, observation, repetition. Similarly, in meditation, no one can meditate for you. You must step in yourself, sit in stillness, and look deeply into your own mind. There is no instant result, no salvific theory, only the continuity of mindfulness and awakening. For this reason, many renowned scientists do not view Buddhism as a closed dogma, but as a uniquely profound and open approach, rich in potential for verification. Fritjof Capra, an Austrian physicist, wrote The Tao of Physics, directly comparing quantum physics with Eastern wisdom. He found that when one delves into the nature of fundamental particles, scientists must accept that nothing is fixed, no entity exists independently. Everything is interconnected, influenced, and in motion together. He called this the miraculous convergence of modern science and ancient Buddhist thought. Carl Sagan, the celebrated astronomer who followed no religion, dedicated many pages to discussing the depth, critical rigor, and scientific spirit of Buddhist philosophy. He argued that if humanity seeks a comprehensive understanding in the future, Buddhism is one of the systems capable of meaningful dialogue with science without fundamental conflict. Crucially, none of these figures believed in Buddhism as a faith. They studied it, practiced it, observed it, and found it accurate within the realms they explored. They did not need to take refuge as disciples, nor become monastics, yet their minds touched a timeless wisdom. If you have ever felt torn between reason and spirituality, between science and meditation, between academia and inner life, Buddhism may offer you a fresh perspective, a path that does not require giving up one to choose the other, but simply invites you to look directly at yourself. No mythology, no persuasion, no defense. Just see for yourself, verify for yourself, walk for yourself. In the next section, we will delve deeper into the relationship between the Big Bang structure of the universe and the Buddhist principles of non-self, impermanence, and dependent origination. You will see that even as science speaks of a beginning of time, Buddhism goes further by showing that no absolute beginning is needed at all. Part 3. The Big Bang Universe, Dependent Origination, Impermanence, Non-Self. Everything is a process, not a thing. Close your eyes and imagine all the stars you see in the sky, the sun, the earth, the planets, the galaxies. all once compressed into an infinitesimal point, smaller than a speck of dust, and then suddenly exploding. The Big Bang was not an explosion of sound, but of space-time itself. Space began to expand, time began to flow, and the universe came into being. Science calls this the Big Bang, the Great Explosion. Everything you know is said to have begun there. But then people started asking, if that was the beginning, what came before the Big Bang? What caused it? Did it require a supernatural force, or was it a random event? Such questions lead scientists to a dead end, for at the moment of the Big Bang, all physical laws dissolve. Time loses meaning, space does not exist, there is neither before nor after. Only a state that the human mind cannot fully conceive. Remarkably, more than 2,000 years ago the Buddha advised his disciples, do not try to trace back the origin of things. Not because he did not know, but because he saw that the mind's fixation on where it began is the mind itself trapped in the concept of time. Time is impermanent, arising and passing away in every instant, without intrinsic self-existence. Therefore, rather than asking from where, he taught us to observe how it operates. From this observation arose a core principle of Buddhism, dependent origination. Dependent origination means nothing arises by itself and nothing exists independently. There is no fixed self separate from the stream of life. Everything arises from many conditions coming together. When those conditions dissipate, the thing dissolves, not created by someone, not programmed by an almighty deity, nor conjured from nothingness. It is simply one link in a continuous chain of conditioned arising and ceasing. Dependent origination offers a non-linear view, no absolute starting point, no central controller, no fully independent agent. You exist because your parents conceived you. They exist because of earlier generations. You breathe because of plants. Plants exist because of sunlight, soil, water, and decomposers. A child smiles because someone touches them. A person grieves because memories awaken. Each action results from thousands of subtle conditions, each itself the effect of other conditions. Modern science is beginning to touch this principle in studies of nonlinear systems and chaotic interactions. Not everything has a single cause. Sometimes the tiniest change can yield enormous effects. This is the butterfly effect. A butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon might trigger a storm in Africa. Buddhism describes this with a simple word, karma, not in some superstitious sense, but meaning that every action, word, and thought leaves an imprint on the stream of consciousness. It does not vanish. It waits for the right conditions to ripen into results. At a deeper level, Buddhism arrives at another principle that even science finds astonishing, non-self. You do not possess an unchanging self or an eternal soul as an independent entity. What you call I is merely the aggregation of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. All these factors are impermanent, arising and passing away, constantly changing. You are not the person you were 5 years ago, nor will you be the person you become 10 years hence. Your body changes, your mind fluctuates, beliefs, memories, emotions flow. So what is the I? Modern science, especially neuroscience, is beginning to see this. There is no absolute center in the brain, no soul region, no repository of self. The brain is just a network, a dynamic system of electrical and chemical signals. Memories can be altered, emotions triggered by the environment, personality reshaped by experience. What you call I is a provisional assemblage, always in flux. The most astonishing thing is that the more science advances, the more emptiness it discovers at the core of phenomena. In quantum physics, when peering inside the atom, they find nothing but emptiness, probability, potential, not a solid entity. What we call matter is essentially emptiness. Buddhism calls this emptiness, sunyata. Nothing stands alone. Nothing has an independent essence. Nothing is a self-existing entity. All things are empty, not in a negative sense, but in that they are unfixed, unbounded, dynamically free, and incredibly flexible. You see, science ventures outward to the edges of the universe, to the boundary of time, to the heart of the atom. Buddhism turns inward to the root of thought, to the instant of arising, to the place where there is no longer anyone observing. There, the two paths begin to meet, not in words or formulas, but in the shattering of all definitions and the opening of an entirely new perspective. Part 4. Quantum Physics. Emptiness. Reality depends on the observer. There is a world beneath what we see, where a particle can exist and not exist at the same time, where it can be in two places at once. That is the quantum realm, a world that does not obey classical physics, where what seems absurd is its true nature. If Newton described the universe as a machine, quantum mechanics shatters that image. No more linear cause and effect, no clear cause leading to a definite result, no fixed matter, only probabilities, potential fluctuations, and the role of the observer. One of the strangest aspects of quantum mechanics is this: a particle only becomes real when someone observes it. Before that, it exists as a cloud of possibility, not a little marble floating in space, but a gentle ripple of a wave spread out without form. Unobserved, it is not a fixed point. When you observe it, the particle appears at the moment you look, and before that there is nothing in the classical sense. The question arises, is the observer truly standing outside, or does the very act of looking bring the world into being in a particular way? This brings us to one of Buddhism's most profound teachings, emptiness, sunyata. Emptiness is not nihilism, nor is it a denial of reality. Emptiness means no inherent, separate essence. All phenomena are without self-nature. All phenomena arise only with conditions. When those conditions vanish, they vanish too. It is like a wave on a pond. You see the wave and name it wave, but in truth the wave is not a separate entity. It is the interplay of water, wind, force, direction, and thousands of invisible factors. Without water, there is no wave. Without wind, no wave. Without an observer, no wave shape. So what is the wave? It is a process, not an entity. Buddhism calls this form is emptiness. Form itself is emptiness, and emptiness is not void but the ground from which all phenomena can arise. Quantum physics is seeing the same. Matter is not something fixed. It emerges from fluctuations of quantum fields, of energy and information. There is nothing independent, only interacting processes. You can sit before a wooden table, place your hand on it, solid, heavy, defined, but magnify everything a million times. Look into each atom, each proton, neutron, electron, and you discover there is nothing but emptiness, fields of energy vibrating in empty space. Strangely, they do not truly exist there without an observer. Unobserved, everything reverts to a superposed state where there is no definitive identity. This does not mean the world does not exist, but that it does not exist as we once thought, not fixed, not separate, not self-existing. Similarly, in Buddhism, what we call self has no inherent nature. Who are you? You are body, mind, memory, thought, emotion, all changing moment by moment. There is no fixed self. The I is merely a concept in motion, a wave in the ocean of life. You might ask, if everything is empty, how do we live? But this is not a denial of reality. Rather, it is an invitation to live mindfully in each moment. Because nothing is fixed, suffering is not fixed. Because nothing has self-nature, we can transform ourselves. Because all is conditionally arisen, a small change in conditions can redirect the entire flow of life. Modern science may not label this spirituality. It simply describes reality in formulas, theories, and experiments. Yet in essence, science is touching what Buddhism has seen for millennia through silence and inner reflection. No particle microscope is needed, no accelerator, only a mind at rest, deep presence, a vision beyond concepts. The marvel is that when science and Buddhism go far enough, both begin to lose words, because ultimate reality lies beyond language, beyond models, beyond intuition. In the next section, we will step through a new door. Meditation is not about venerating ancient tradition, but about seeing that when you sit down and close your eyes, your brain actually changes. This is no longer theory but scientific fact, measured by brainwaves and modern instruments. It is your inner stillness. Part 5. Meditation and the brain, gamma waves, restructuring the mind through mindfulness. You have heard that meditation reduces stress, meditation calms the mind, meditation improves sleep, but few know that meditation actually changes the brain structure. This is not a metaphor, not belief, not a vague claim. It is scientific fact, measured, imaged, analyzed, and published by leading research centers worldwide. Since the late 20th century, scientists have asked, if someone meditates for years, how does their brain differ from a typical person's? They used functional MRI, EEG sensors, real-time monitoring, and the results astonished the scientific community. One subject was Matthew Ricard, a PhD in genetics from the Pasteur Institute, who left it all to study with Tibetan masters in the Himalayas. Years later, as a monk, he became central to meditation research. When Ricard entered the lab at the University of Wisconsin, hundreds of sensors were placed on his head. Scientists asked him to enter a deep meditative state and then measured his gamma waves, the brainwaves associated with heightened awareness, joy, and neural coherence. They found his gamma wave activity was hundreds of times greater than normal. Time magazine called him the happiest man in the world, not because he was always smiling, but because his brain was synchronized, peaceful, and radiantly active like a cloudless sky. Ricard was not alone. Dozens, and now hundreds, of long-term meditators show similar patterns. The compassion center of the brain lights up, the prefrontal cortex, the executive center for emotion regulation, thickens, stress response regions become better regulated, and the limbic system, which governs negative emotions, stabilizes. Science once thought the brain was fixed, but now accepts this. The brain can change through experience. This is called neuroplasticity, and meditation is one of the most powerful tools for reprogramming the brain. Buddhism does not use scientific language. Yet long ago, the Buddha pointed out that body and mind are deeply connected. The mind leads, the mind creates the world. With mindfulness, that is, sustained, awake presence, suffering can dissolve, consciousness can transform, and life can change course. Today, meditation is used in hospitals, prisons, and mental health centers, not as a religious ritual, but as a scientifically grounded practice. Mindfulness-based programs for depression, anxiety, and insomnia often outperform medication because medication treats only symptoms, while meditation addresses root causes. But have you ever wondered why sitting still and doing nothing can heal? Meditation is not an action, but the subtlest action of awareness, a deep look into the mind, a release from unconscious reactions, full presence with oneself. When you meditate, you do not run from emotions, suppress thoughts, or deny sadness. You simply sit with everything, without intervention, judgment, or labeling. This clarity makes your mind like a lake settling. The waters calm, become clear, and reveal the depths. Science has only just begun to measure the outward effects, but meditation holds something deeper, a return. Not a return to home or to some realm, but a return to yourself. Back to the mind that never truly arises or ceases, the silent awareness preceding all thought. The Buddha himself sat in meditation under the Bodhi tree for 49 days. He did not debate, preach, or write. He sat and saw. From that inner stillness arose light, not from outside, but from within. Today, science approaches from the outside in, with machines, measurements, and data to understand the mind, while Buddhism approaches from the inside out, using inner silence to reveal reality's nature. Two paths that seem opposite may be meeting at a single point. That point is not on paper or a screen, but where you truly look into your own mind. In the next section, we will explore another profound principle that science is beginning to touch: cause and effect, karma, and the chaotic structure of complex systems. You will see how every action, word, and thought creates waves that, unseen, nonetheless ripple through the entire network of life. One question has haunted humanity. Why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve it? Is my fate predetermined across lifetimes? Part 6. Karma, cause and effect. The butterfly effect. Small actions, big consequences. Everything has a clear cause, and, given enough data, we can predict outcomes. But in the realm of complex systems and nonlinear science, everything unravels. In that world, a tiny change can produce a vast result. A butterfly's gentle wing beat in the Amazon can trigger a storm in Africa. A seemingly harmless comment today can sow the seeds of collapse years later. Science calls this the butterfly effect, the extreme sensitivity to initial conditions in nonlinear systems. Good actions do not always yield simple good results. Sometimes a small action, at precisely the right moment, in the perfect circumstances, with the right person, multiplies into something radically different. Buddhism calls this karma, not as a superstition to frighten people, not as a punitive justice, but as the imprint that every action, word, and thought leaves on consciousness. These imprints do not vanish. They persist as tendencies. Once you have felt anger, it arises more easily next time. Once you have lied, deception flows more smoothly. Each repetition forges a neural pathway. Like a footpath worn into a field, habit becomes second nature. That is karma. No one punishes you, but you yourself sow and you reap. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. Behaviors and the brain co-create pathways based on habit. The more you do something, the more easily it repeats, the more it becomes you. There is no fixed personality, only patterns repeated so often that we mistake them for self. The I is the crystallization of countless karmic imprints across past and present. No single self controls it all, only the flow of karma arising and passing away. Is there a way to free oneself from karma? Buddhism teaches that through mindfulness, full presence in each action and thought, you can interrupt the habit loop. The instant you notice sadness, anger, or harmful speech, that moment of awareness plants a new seed. A single moment of awakening creates a new pathway and a new flow. Just as in complex systems, a small, well-timed intervention can redirect the entire system. No need to dismantle everything. One point of conscious awareness, one moment of clarity, one different choice, and everything shifts. Karma is not fixed. No one is born doomed to their fate. There is no destiny, only tendencies that can be transformed. That is why the Buddha did not ask you to believe in karma, but to see karma and act freely to transcend it. Today, artificial intelligence models, machine learning algorithms, and neural networks operate on a similar principle. They record patterns of behavior, form habits, and then automatically respond accordingly. Humans are no different. We are the sum of what we repeat. Buddhism goes one step further. It does not merely analyze mechanisms, but offers you the key to liberation. Not through theory, but through practice, meditation, mindfulness, compassion, observing non-self, and choosing not to react in old ways. Each time you break the habitual response, a new future begins. Thus, cause and effect become clear. Karma becomes an opportunity for transformation rather than a burden, and science is gradually recognizing this insight. Buddhism has long pointed out that the path to freedom lies in how you live each moment. In the next section, we will explore a profound question. What is consciousness? If every action affects the world, who is observing? Who is knowing? Science cannot yet define consciousness, but Buddhism has long addressed it directly. We have spoken of matter, brainwaves, karma and causality, of quantum physics and dependent origination, but one thing remains unexamined. No matter who you are, you cannot deny that you know. You know you are hearing. You know you are thinking. No one inside your head is telling you this. You simply know. That knowing is consciousness. What is consciousness? Where does it come from, and when does it begin? Do only humans possess it? Can machines have it? Most importantly, who or what is the knower? This is one of the deepest, most vexing questions in modern science. Fields from neuroscience to psychology, molecular biology to artificial intelligence strive for a definition, yet no satisfactory answer exists. You can measure brainwaves, observe biochemical reactions, model brain regions active while loving or angry or remembering. But the knowing, I am loving, I am angry, I am remembering, cannot be measured. No device can capture the moment you know that you know. Science calls this the hard problem of consciousness, subjective experience. The I, witnessing reality, eludes all physical, biological, and computational models. In Buddhism, consciousness is not new. More than 2,000 years ago, the Buddha analyzed it in detail. He taught that consciousness is not unitary and that no self controls it. It is a stream of awareness flowing from moment to moment without a fixed I at its center. In the Yogacara system, a profound Buddhist psychology, consciousness is divided into 8 aspects. The first 6 are familiar: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental thought. The 7th is the manas, the sense of I that gives rise to the illusion of a self. The eighth is the alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness containing all mental seeds, memories, karmic imprints, and tendencies, like an individual information field. Alaya is not soul nor brain. It is the continuous flow of consciousness across lifetimes. It has no fixed self at its center. Science finds that many memories persist even when the brain is damaged. Near-death experiences report awareness when measurable brain function has ceased. Some researchers now ask, is consciousness truly produced by the brain, or is the brain merely a receiver, like a radio tuning into a deeper field? If so, consciousness is not material but the ground that reveals matter. It is the silent foundation of all phenomena, like space itself, invisible, intangible, yet enabling everything to exist. In Buddhism, consciousness is the ever-knowing ground, unborn, undying, nameless, ownerless. Some quantum physicists also hint at this. They suggest that the observer does more than influence outcomes. They suggest that observation brings reality into being. Without awareness, reality has no fixed form. All remains probability, potential. Perception and presence make the world appear as you see it. So who is the knower if there is no fixed self? If consciousness is a flow? If all is dependent origination? Is anyone there? Buddhism does not answer with a concept. It invites you instead to sit, close your eyes, and observe that very awareness. No analysis, no searching, no trying to understand. Just look, just be present. If you are silent long enough, deeply enough, you will see that no one is there, only knowing itself. A selfless, lucid state of pure awareness. Science has not yet reached this point, though it is close, and Buddhism sits there like a silent mountain as the world spins around it. In the next section, we will expand our vision to the cosmos. Science speaks of multiverses, Buddhism speaks of boundless realms. These two paths may converge in the realization that this universe is not unique and that consciousness is not confined to this body. Have you ever believed otherwise? Part 8. Multiverse, countless realms, states of consciousness in Buddhism and cosmology. We once believed this universe was unique, that there is only one world, one three-dimensional space, one timeline flowing forward. If you have ever thought this way, you are not alone. Humanity thought the same for thousands of years, until science began to expand our view. No longer just planets orbiting the sun or galaxies drifting through vast space. We now entertain the possibility of countless other universes existing in parallel with our own. This is the multiverse hypothesis. Universes with different physical laws, different constants, different numbers of dimensions, even realities where every choice you make here plays out elsewhere. It sounds fantastical, yet many serious physicists study these ideas, not out of faith, but because mathematical equations, when extended to their limits, point in that direction. Remarkably, Buddhism spoke of this long ago, not calling it a multiverse, but countless realms. Not only the world of Earth, but the 3,000 great thousand worlds, realms of pure light, realms of sound alone, realms born of thought alone, realms without bodies like ours, all coexisting in parallel across different levels of consciousness. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha described 10 realms: hell, hungry ghosts, animals, asuras, humans, heavens, Sravakas, Pratyabuddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. These are not fixed locations, but states of mind. Depending on your mind, you experience the corresponding realm. In other words, the universe is not only out there, but also constructed by our own minds. And the mind is not confined to 3 physical dimensions. Today, theoretical physics likewise concludes that 3-dimensional space is an outward projection of higher dimensions. Some theories, like string theory, posit up to 11 spatial dimensions, dimensions that exist but are curled up at scales we cannot directly perceive. Like an ant crawling on a rolled-up sheet, seeing only a line without knowing it lives in a higher dimensional space. If that is true, we may inhabit only a thin slice of reality. What we do not perceive does not mean it does not exist, only that our senses cannot access it. Buddhism teaches that limits lie not in the universe, but in perception. When your mind opens, when distracting thoughts settle, when ego clinging dissolves, You can perceive what others cannot, not with ordinary sight, but with the wisdom eye, vision unobscured by concepts. So, does the multiverse really exist? Science has no proof. Buddhism needs no proof. Both merely suggest the possibility. More importantly, no matter how vast the universe is, how many realms, how many dimensions, the only place you truly experience them is in your own mind. If your mind is full of anger, you live in hell even among flowers. If your mind is awake, you live in heaven even amid suffering. The universe may be infinitely large, but without a perceiver it remains an unopened curtain. That perceiver is you, not the familiar I, but the light behind that I, never born and never dying. If you truly quiet down, you see that the universe is not outside you. You are not inside the universe, but you and the universe are inseparable, not by theory, but by the complete dissolution of subject and object. Part 9. Wordless questions. The limits of science. Vision beyond concepts. You have pondered that question while gazing at the sky, or in the midst of suffering, or standing before a loved one's death, or when you had nothing left to hold on to. That question is, why does life exist? Why is there this universe? Why do I exist? Where did it all begin? Science pursues these questions with humanity's most sophisticated tools: telescopes, particle accelerators, mathematical models with thousands of variables, string theories, quantum gravity, multiverse hypotheses, singularities. Yet the deeper we go, the more reality appears as an endless veil. Each layer we peel back reveals yet higher complexity. Science once believed that with enough knowledge we could understand everything. Today, many great scientists admit the opposite. The more we know, the more we realize how little we truly understand. They do not say this from loss of faith, but because they have reached the limits of linear thought, limits of reason, limits of mapping reality with language and logic. Buddhism does not deny science or dismiss inquiry or belittle human intelligence. Rather, the Buddha recognized one fact: the intellect has its boundaries. No matter how hard you try, you cannot use discriminating knowledge to grasp the nature of the non-discriminable. A seeker once asked the Buddha, "Does the world have a beginning? Does a soul exist? After death, does the awakened one persist?" The Buddha offered no answer, not because he did not know, but because he understood that such questions arise from a mindset that, if entertained, only further entangles the mind. In the middle-length discourses, he gave the example of a man struck by a poisoned arrow. Instead of having the arrow removed immediately, the man insists on knowing who shot it, from what material it was made, what color the feathers bore, which would form the shaft, who crafted the bow. The Buddha said, if he pursues such questions, he will die before learning anything useful. This story does not promote ignorance or blind faith. It reminds us that some questions spring from an ego hungry for control, understanding for security, analysis to deny impermanence. But truth does not demand you understand it. It only asks that you see it. Buddhism does not teach you to find a final answer, but to observe the workings of your own mind. When that seeing becomes profound, the question naturally falls away, not because you have a solution, but because you no longer need one. Science asks, where did the universe come from? When did time begin? What is the first cause? Buddhism offers no date, no data, no model. The Buddha merely smiles and says, notice here the arising and passing of each breath. One end stretches far into expanse, the other returns close at hand. One path probes the cosmic frontier, the other invites you to observe the very eyes that see, and both arrive at the same silence. All answers are provisional, all theories are maps, all models have limits, but knowing itself silently abides, unbounded, ineffable, needing no proof, only full presence in this moment. In one of his final teachings, the Buddha spoke no words. He simply held up a flower. All were silent. Only Mahakassapa smiled. The Buddha said, I convey the Dharma beyond words to him. That moment encapsulated 1,000 teachings in one gesture. For truth cannot be conveyed in language, but only revealed in the silence of a mind free from seeking. In the next and final section, we will review this entire journey, not to summarize, but to witness that the meeting of Buddhism and science lies not in theory or form, but in a return to our own direct experience. Part 10. Summary. Returning to yourself. Science and Buddhism open a door. There is a beautiful saying: science helps us understand the world. The Dharma helps us understand ourselves. And when we understand ourselves, the world also becomes clear. We have journeyed from the Big Bang to samsara, from matter to consciousness, from the brain to karmic forces, from quantum concepts to the wordless seeing of the awakened mind. You may feel you still haven't grasped it all. You may be confused in places. You may not yet be certain what Buddhism truly is or where science is headed. But that is not the most important thing. The true value of this journey lies not in how much knowledge you accumulate, but in that moment when your mind quiets, you pause, and you realize that all understanding which does not bring you back to yourself remains external. No matter how many studies you read or videos you watch, or how many concepts you master, if you haven't truly observed your own mind, you have not yet begun. Buddhism does not oppose science. On the contrary, the Buddha said that if any teaching is proven wrong by science, Buddhism is ready to let it go. Because Buddhism is not a rigid belief system, but a living, open method of awakening that renews itself within the field of direct inner experience. Similarly, humble and honest science is beginning to enter the realm of mind, not just as an objective world, but as a co-created reality between observer and observed. There, Buddhism and science are no longer two. There is no conflict between reason and faith, no longer two opposing ideologies, but two arms guiding us toward truth on two paths, one from the outside in, one from the inside out. A scientist may unravel the structure of DNA, but if they have not understood the unconscious habits shaping their own actions, they remain bound. A practitioner may penetrate the nature of selflessness, but without understanding the mechanics of the body, the brain, and society, they risk isolation and detachment from life. Therefore, the path is not to choose one over the other, but to open your heart to both. Use science to understand the world, use the Dharma to understand yourself, and in that harmony, a new door opens. You do not need to understand everything. You do not need to agree completely. You do not need to become a monk or a scientist. Just begin with something very small. Turn your attention inward and observe yourself. When you feel anger, observe the anger. When you feel fear, quietly watch the fear. When desire arises, do not judge it. Simply be present and observe. For within each emotion lies the doorway to freedom. You need not search for enlightenment far away, because everything you seek is already within you. There is no Buddha outside, only Buddhahood waiting to be awakened within you. And if you ask, why make this video? Why speak of Buddhism and science? Why not remain silent like the awakened ones taught? The answer is, we do not speak to explain, but to open a door, to remind you of what you have always known but once forgot. You may remember nothing after watching, but if in just one moment you pause, take a breath, and truly abide in presence, this video has done its work. May you find peace in every thought, word, and action. You need not believe in anything. Only return and look directly at yourself. That is the beginning of all wisdom. Homage to the Buddha, the original teacher, Sakyamuni.